In the effect and bus tutorial, I showed you how to select the active effect, edit various effects, and how to assign buses to both wave samples and instrument tracks. I'm going to put that into practice in this video. What I've done is I've sequenced a song, I have the corresponding instruments loaded, and now I'm going to sweeten that song by applying effects properly. I'm going to show you some advanced techniques of how to stretch your mileage effects-wise. The first thing you'll notice is that all the effects are off. So I'm going to play back a little bit of the sequence so you can get an idea of how it sounds before we get into the effect processing. So that's kind of bland and flat sounding. There's one particular sample I want to point out.
This is not a dream.
What I want to do with that sample is add some nice delay. I need to do that first because I'm going to assign other effects like reverb. I can't obviously apply this delay wholesale over the entire mix, nor can I just leave the rest of the tracks dry and have delay over this one sample. That would be a waste of processing power, so I'm going to show you a way to get around that. The first thing I need to do is set up the delay that I want to apply to this sample. So in this case, I want 44 kilohertz delays. I'm going to edit the effect. The variation that I want is stereo bounce. If you go through the parameters, the default delay time would work, but I know the tempo of the song, and getting out the calculator, I know that I want a delay with a specific millisecond so it synchronizes with the beat. So on the left side, I'm going to do 492. And on the right side, I'm going to do 983. So I'll play back that sample and you can see how different it sounds.
This is not a dream.
That sounds way thicker. Now that we have a delay that we like, the next step is to print that effect to the wave sample so we can free up the effects processor. I didn't cover this in the previous tutorial, so I'm going to show you how to do that now. What I'm going to do is copy the original wave sample multiple times to the same instrument. So I select the wave sample I want, Command Wave, copy wave sample, pick the instrument, yes, layer 1, yes, parameters and data, yes, Command wave sample, copy wave sample, same instrument, make another copy. Why did I make two copies? Samples in the EPS-16 are only mono. You can pan them in the stereo field, but unlike the ASR10, the samples themselves have to be mono. The problem with delay, this particular delay, is that it pans it left and right automatically. So if I want to keep that panned delay feel, but not use the effects processor, then I have to sample this twice. So I have a left and a right channel sample. This complicates things quite a bit, but it's entirely doable. The next thing I need to do is select our original wave sample, Command Wave, resample with effect. That will, in a sense, print that effect to tape so we can turn off the effect processor and still have that effect remain on the wave sample. Instrument 8, that's where we have our samples. We created the additional wave samples in the same instrument. That's what you have to do if you want to resample with effects. So the first one is wave sample 2. That'll be our left channel. You want to resample to the original root note of your original sample. The recording time, it's a delay, so it's fairly long. Longer is better. You can always trim off silence at the end, but you don't want to get carried away. 4.5 seconds should work for how long this delay lasts. You can pick your record channel. So this, if we change this, it's going to record the left side of the delay. So we're all set.
This is not a dream.
You can preview this, but I'm just going to say yes, we want the new one. Now we want to do the same thing again. We have our first wave sample, original one, selected, command wave, resample with effect. We're just repeating this process, except we're saving it into wave sample 3 now, which is our next channel. Our root note is correct. We'll change that channel to the right.
This is not a dream.
Perfect. Now we have the left and right channel and the original. If we turn off the effect and then go to the original wave sample and command wave, delete wave sample, that gets rid of the original wave sample. Command layer, create new layer, layer 2 created. Why we're selecting wave sample 2 and why did we just create a new layer? We need to stack these since it's a left and right channel. We need to have them playing simultaneously. So we're going to do command wave copy wave sample, the same instrument, but we're going to paste that onto layer 2. I copied the wave sample to layer 2, and then I deleted it from layer 1. So I have only one wave sample on layer 1, go to layer 2, and I only have one on layer 1. One thing we need to do is make sure that the samples are one shots. Do edit envelope 3. Make sure the envelope mode is to cycle. We're going to do the same thing for the other wave sample on layer 1. Edit envelope 3, cycle. Now, what we can do is affect the panning. So we'll pan one hard left, pick the other wave sample on layer 2, edit amp, and put that one hard right. So now they're spread in the stereo spectrum. And we'll play that back.
This is not a dream.
So that came out perfectly well. Remember, the effects are off. So that delay is coming from the effects that we sampled.
This is not a dream.
Now you might have heard a click at the very end of that. what we want to do there is select this wave sample, turning off the volume all the way on this one. We don't want to be confused as to what wave sample we're working on. So layer 2, we'll select the wave sample there. This should be the only one audible. So we'll play it back. It's only coming out of one channel, so we know exactly which one we're working on. So we need to get rid of that click. That wave sample sounds fine. So we're going to do edit amp, turn down the volume on that one, go back to the one that has the problem click, edit amp, turn the volume back up so we can work on it. Command amp, we can do fade out. Our start address, we'll change that to something high so it's at the end of the sample, right before the click. 95 should work fine. Use the data slider and you can jump directly to the end of the sample, 99%. The scale depth, that's how acute the cutoff slope is. We can change that sharply. Now hopefully our click should be gone. Perfect. Now, if we go back to our other wave sample, edit amp, put the volume back up, play them back.
This is not a dream.
That's absolutely perfect. So our instrument's all set, and we're now free to apply effects to all the other instruments. Now, if I play back the song, I should be able to hear the delayed effects on that sample only, and none of the other instruments should have any effects on them at all. So we've achieved that perfectly. Now what we have to do is decide on effects that we're going to use, and we have to do this strategically. I'm going to choose the same effect that I showed you in the previous tutorial, distortion, chorus, and reverb. Edit, effect, parallel effects, that's all the same. We want distortion into chorus mix. We don't want that. We want our distortion to be totally pure. Chorus into reverb mix. We do want that. Any instrument that I'm going to put chorus on, I also want to have reverb on. So I'm going to put that up to 50%. Bus 3 reverb mix, 25 is pretty good. It's not obnoxious reverb, and it's not too thinned out either. So we want something a little wet. Distortion gain, I'm going to put that down to 70 and the out to 40. That's a taste issue. When we play back the drums, we might go and alter that some more. Distortion filter, you can also adjust this to taste. I'm going to put that up to 72 and put the bandwidth to 1. Distortion mix, I don't like the sound of pure distortion. I want quite a bit of the original signal in there, so I'm putting that down to 40%. The reverb decay time should be fine. Low frequency, high frequency, all that. Early reflection, the chorus, I don't need to change any of that. So I'm happy with that. Now what we need to do is assign what instruments we want to particular buses. So edit, track, instrument 1, those are my drums. I'm going to page through, change that to bus 1. I want distortion on the drums. 2, I want just the reverb. That's my bass. I don't want anything distorted on that. This is another one that I want for chorus. That is a bell sound. This one here is another one I want chorus on. This is some droning strings in the background. Instrument 5, I want reverb on. It's a kind of piercing lead sound. I want reverb on instrument 6. I want reverb on 7. And 8, I don't want distortion on. I want just reverb. 8 is our already delayed sample, so that's going to have delay and reverb on it. Now, another thing we want to do is affect the volume and panning on each of these. So going through, I don't want my drums this high. I'm going to turn that down to 80. And leaving the pan wave sample, I have a lot of the cymbals panned within that instrument, so I don't want to affect the panning on that. This is just bass. I want that up high, and the panning should be centered in the wave sample, so that's fine. The bell sound, I do want that pan to the side, so I'm going to change that to 30, negative 30. The drone, I want that centered. My bright lead sound, I want that pan slightly to the other side of the bell, so I'm going to put that positive 20. I'm going to pan this warm 5th sound to the same side. This one here is a piercing lead, so I have the volume turned down. And this here is our delayed. We can leave that centered. So I'm going to play back the song, and you can see how different everything sounds. So that was all in the box. I didn't use any outboard effects. I didn't send anything out to an effects processor and resample it. I didn't use a mixer. I didn't use any VST plugins. This was all the capabilities of the EPS-16 itself. There are no hard and fast rules on getting the most mileage out of the effects processor, but a couple guidelines would be time-based sounds like reverb and delay. You want to avoid resampling if possible. In this video, I did resample the delay. That was a trade-off I made. If it was a delay on every drum kit or a reverb on the cymbals and the drums, the decay time would eat up memory very quickly. Distortion, chorus, flange, phaser, those are all good things to use resample with because the time of your wave sample won't change, so it won't eat up additional memory. In this case, it would have been impractical for me to resample every single drum sample with distortion, so I made the trade-off of resampling a one-shot with delay for the ease of going back to tweak the distortion. I also want to reiterate that while the effects are capable of coming out in stereo, the wave samples themselves are only mono. So if you want a wide stereo field, then you either have to pan them or apply an effect that will create a stereo field out of a mono source. So, for example, the delay I used on the one-shot vocal sample panned it left and right automatically. The ASR10, you could sample in something that was already in stereo. In the EPS-16, the wave samples are limited to mono, so you're totally dependent on panning and effects to get a wide stereo field. One thing that you should be aware of that they don't cover in the manual and no one seems to mention is that the distortion chorus reverb effect collapses the stereo field. You'll notice if you turn off all the effects and play back something with panning in the wave samples, you'll have full stereo field. If you play back something that has that panning in the wave samples through the distortion chorus or reverb bus, that becomes mono. You can pan the individual instrument tracks to widen the stereo field, but any of the panning within that instrument is automatically collapsed to mono. That's a huge drawback. Some of the other effects, like 44 kilohertz reverb, that maintains stereo all the way through from front to back. So now I'm going to play back the same mix with just reverb applied to the buses instead of the distortion chorus and reverb mono effects. You'll notice the additional panning details, especially in the cymbals. And while I had to sacrifice the distortion on the drums and the chorus on some of the other lead instruments, I feel it was worth the trade-off. If you wanted to combine both of these techniques, then you could resample the kick and snare with distortion and then send it through the 44 kilohertz reverb, and that would preserve the stereo field. The chorusing on the instruments can be more tricky depending on how many wave samples comprise that particular instrument. If each note in the instrument had its own wave sample, then resampling with, say, chorus would be quite a chore, especially if you needed to go back and tweak that effect again.